Sri Chaitanya Manukristam Shravitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Padamayam Dadati Swaha Pandantikam Vandemam Sri Guru Sri Jata Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sarvajatam Sahavana Raghunatan Nitam Shatam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahavana Lalita Sri Vishakanatam Scha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sundarani Askata Deshatarine Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namanigoye Tashe Namaha Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Hanta Radha Hanta Namostute Tapya Panchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Tananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataru Vaishna Vivasindhu Vegacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Yatra yatra manodehi dharayet sakalam diha sneha dvesha bhaya vapi yati tat svarupatam. Translation purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. If out of love, hate, or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon a particular bodily form, he will certainly attain the form that he is meditating upon. You can read it.
If out of love, hate, or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon a particular bodily form, he will certainly attain the form he is meditating upon.
Purport. From this verse, it is not hard to understand that if one constantly meditates upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will achieve a spiritual body just like that of the Lord. The word diya, with intelligence, indicates complete intellectual conviction in a particular understanding, and similarly the word sakalam indicates one-pointed attention of the mind. With such complete absorption of consciousness, surely one will attain the next life, in the next life, a form exactly like that upon which one was meditating. This is another example learned from the insect kingdom, as explained in the following verse. I'm going to read the following verse, since it's connected to this previous verse. Kita heshak skritam dhyayam kudyam tena praveshita yatitat satmatam rajan purvarupam ashantyajan. Kita, an insect. Heshak skritam, a wasp. Dhyayam, meditating on. Kudyam, in his hive. Tena, by the wasp. Praveshita, forced to enter. Yatit, he goes. Tat, of the wasp. Sa'atmanam, the same state of existence. Rajan, O king. Purvarupam, the previous body. Asantyajan, not giving up. Translation and purport. O king, once a wasp forced a weaker insect to enter his hive and kept him trapped there. In great fear, the weak insect constantly meditated upon his captor, and without giving up his body, he gradually achieved the same state of existence as the wasp. Thus, one achieves a state of existence according to one's constant concentration. Purport. The following question may be raised. Since the weaker insect in this story did not physically change his body, how can it be said that he achieved the same state of existence as the wasp? Actually, by constant meditation upon a particular object, one's consciousness becomes filled with its qualities. Due to extreme fear, the smaller insect was absorbed in the characteristics and activities of the large wasp, and thus entered into the existence of the wasp. Due to such meditation, he actually took the body of a wasp in his next life. Similarly, although we are conditioned souls, if we absorb our consciousness in Lord Krishna, we can become liberated even before giving up our present body. If our intelligence becomes steady on the spiritual platform by understanding that Lord Krishna is everything, then we can give up unnecessary consciousness of the external body and absorb ourselves in the spiritual pastimes of Vaikuntha. Thus, even before death, one has to raise oneself to the spiritual platform and enjoy a life as a liberated soul. Or if one is a stubborn fool, then even in this life, one can become just like an animal, such as the hog or a dog, constantly thinking of eating and sex life. But human life is actually meant for understanding the science of consciousness and the future results of our meditation. These two verses are summarized in the Bhagavad Gita shloka. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajati antikalevaram tam tam evaiti konteya salata bhava bhavitaha. We discussed this briefly yesterday, that whatever one thinks of at the time of death, that form one will obtain in one's next birth. So, man is the architect of his own destiny. We are the cause of our future births. In a sense, we can say that this body that we presently have is a creation from our imagination. In other words, we imagined a particular form of body. That means eyes, ears, nose, various senses. And through that imaginative thought of enjoyment, we have now obtained the present state. So consciousness precedes form. Things go from subtle to gross. And therefore, the body which we now have is the result of the subtle consciousness and desires of our previous lifetime. The example which is given here from material nature is very nice. And again, we should point out how it will be very beneficial for all of us to be alert at every moment to learn nature's lessons. The sign of an intelligent devotee is that he's always trying to perceive an instruction from Krishna in each and every situation. He never thinks that he is being moved about simply by chance. He just thinks that everything that is happening to me must be an arrangement by the Lord for me to learn something further about his devotional service. So here is an example which I think all of us may have seen at some time or another, that a wasp captures an insect and pushes the insect into a hole and then seals the hole with some dirt and then lives with that insect until eventually he kills the insect. So you can just imagine what is the consciousness of that insect captured within the small confines of a little hole. The hole is hardly big enough to hold both the wasp and the insect. And he's forced to look at this form of all-devouring death before him. In other words, the insect has to meditate on the horrible features of the wasp. And his entire consciousness is absorbed in this wasp. His eyes, his sense of touch, his sense of smell, his hearing, all of his senses are absorbed in meditating on this wasp. So before his death, which may take a matter of minutes, he develops all of the qualities of the wasp. It is almost like a neurotic condition. You see, he develops a type of neurosis, a psychological disease, under which he takes on the qualities of that which he's meditating upon. So, although he has not yet become a wasp, in all respects, he's so closely identified with his captor, the wasp, that he is thinking like a wasp, he's sensing like a wasp, his mind and consciousness is absorbed in being a wasp. And the result is that in his next birth, he takes birth as a wasp. When the soul leaves the body at the time of death, what happens? The mind, the intelligence, the ego, these are not destroyed. When we say the body is destroyed, it doesn't mean that the subtle body is destroyed. The subtle body is not destroyed. And it is the subtle body which carries the soul into its next birth. So this situation is described that the Yamadutas tie or capture the soul in its subtle form and drag it along unto the court of Yamaraj. And then there is one of the servants of Yamaraj that reads off the list of activities, offenses and pious credits that the particular soul incurred during that human sojourn. And then Yamaraj, as the officiating judge, impartially awards the particular punishment. Why does he award the punishment? Because the living entity is now headed for his next birth. And unless he can develop a proper consciousness, he cannot take his next birth. So, for example, supposing someone's activities are very hoggish. In other words, a hog's mentality is, Prabhupada describes it, that the hog drinks milk from the mother hog, and the next moment tries to have sex with his mother. This is one of the natures of a hog. Another thing about a hog is that a hog is always looking for eating stool. So it is hard to imagine how a human being could go from how a soul could go from a human body to a hog's body. It takes some preparation. So this preparation is enacted on the subtle platform in the kingdom of Yamaraj. In other words, there are various punishments which are awarded as described in the 5th canto. For example, there is one punishment awarded whereby one is thrown into an ocean of stool. So in such a condition of being in the ocean of stool, you can imagine that one gradually, for no other alternative, has to develop a taste for stool. So being submerged in and out of such a condition, gradually the living entity develops this quality of taste. His sense of taste develops a liking for stool. So in this way, the various senses in the mind are prepared and conditioned in order for the next gross body to be accepted by the spirit soul. So when he's ready, then he takes his next birth. Then the soul goes into a hog's body. And all of this takes place in a subtle platform, and it doesn't take very long. It may only take, from our estimation, some minutes or moments even. But from the subtle time scan, it seems to go on and on endlessly. It is long enough, in any case, for the consciousness to become completely absorbed in that type of sensual experience. So this is the science of reincarnation. And we should therefore realize how it is important to control the mind, to control the senses, so that such a terrible future does not befall any of us. Now here it mentions in the first verse that out of love, hate, or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence. So let us consider each of these. Love, or the word here is affection, sneha. Really, affection is meant to describe, this word sneha is also used in describing Krishna and his associates who exhibit natural affection for each other. Because the original attraction is for Lord Krishna. But having forgotten Krishna, we are now trying to become affectionate with these material bodies. But please consider how imperfect is this body for showing and receiving affection. Just like one of our devotees has this eczema. Where is she? Tirupati. She's suffering from. So she has this skin disease. So in one sense, she has an obvious skin disease. But actually everybody has got all kinds of, problems with this body, but it's not on the surface. But as soon as you open it up, it becomes very clear. As soon as the body is, if you had a zipper and you could just open it up, it would be the most obnoxious sight. It would be revolting to see what is in this body. And the body is actually very disgusting, the material body. It has nothing to do with the spiritual body. Just like in the Ishopanishads described that Krishna is veinless. Right? The Supreme Lord has no veins. It's to be understood that his body doesn't have all of these obnoxious, digestive tracts, circulatory systems, respiratory systems. He exists with a spiritual form. And we also have the spiritual form. But at the present moment, it is not revealed. It is in a dormant condition. So instead we have got this disgusting, obnoxious form in which we, try to express our affections for others with similarly obnoxious forms. And this is called love. In the material world, two obnoxious bodies coming together, and they describe us as love. But actually it is not at all like that. I mean, what is this body? It has different gateways, holes in the body. Holes for excreting, for urinating, for, out of the ears comes wax, out of the mouth pours saliva, the eyes drip with tears. This is the body. You just see what is happening. It's just, if it all starts to pour out, what comes out of the body? You can see what this body is made of. So people are very attached, however, to this body because of the packaging. Maya is so clever that somehow or other she has turned the most disgusting thing into something which appears to be attractive. There's a false advertising, false propaganda. I mean, pure food and drug administrations around the world should close her down, saying that you are given false promise in this product. The product is nothing like what you advertise it to be. And that's our business, you see. We are actually supposed to be the government that tells all the consumers, you're being cheated. This product is not at all what it's made out to be. It has a bad smell, a bad taste, everything about it is bad. But they've advertised it so well. So, this is the world we're living in. This is a cheating society. In any case, this type of attraction is very foolish. And it is a perversion of the attraction to the spiritual forms. Therefore, we're taught to meditate on the deity. To meditate with our eyes on the form of the deity. And this will purify our sense of vision. That is not a cheating form. Krishna's transcendental form, Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Srila Rupa Goswami says that the form of Govinda is so beautiful that if you are attached to family, friendship, and society, please do not go down to the banks of the Jamuna. Because if you're attached to family, friendship, and society, and you go down to the bank of the Jamuna, you just may happen to see Govinda. And seeing him, you will lose all attraction to all of these other things. So please don't look at Krishna. If you want to stay attached to your family, friendship, and society, just don't look at Govinda. This is what Rupa Goswami, very nice prayer prays. And similarly, we can say that don't eat prasada. If you have any desire to want to eat all of the mysterious things of this world, whatever they may be, then please don't taste prasada. Because once tasting prasada, you will lose your taste for everything else. I know that happened to me. The first time I tasted halva, I became convinced about Krishna consciousness. Just by tasting halva. It was so nice. And the same thing goes for the sound of Hare Krishna. Once we become absorbed in really hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, it becomes unpleasant for us to hear other sound vibrations. We immediately fall into some anxiety when we stop hearing Hare Krishna. The similar association with devotees is like that. It's so pleasing that after a while to associate with the karmis is unbearable. I've seen how devotees like to sometimes feel obliged to visit their family, their relatives. And when they first join, they go home and visit their relatives. But gradually it becomes more and more unpleasant and unbearable to deal with family members because they are not devotees of the Lord. So, real attraction or affection is there, but if you develop this other type of affection, then the danger is yaya yato visaya pumsa, sangasteshu sanjayate, sangat sanjayate, kama krodha vidayate. Krodha bhavati sammoha, sammoha shmiti vibharma, shmiti brahmasat buddhinasha, buddhinasha vinashate. That this is a sequence of events which the Bhagavad Gita describes about contemplating the objects of the senses. The Bhagavad Gita is so nice, it's just very scientific, that you first of all look at the object and you develop attraction. And from this attraction comes kama, or lust. And from lust will come anger. And from anger comes bewilderment. And one's intelligence becomes lost, and then one gradually falls down into the material whirlpool. So all of it starts with the uncontrolled senses. Therefore, yoga means to control the senses. And how do we do it? Not by simply trying to stop them from negative activity, but by positive engagement. If you find it difficult to control sex desire, if you find it difficult to control material desires, then the best way to do it is to learn to develop activities in Krishna consciousness. Simply trying to frustrate material desires will not work. But Param Krishna Vartate, we have to develop a higher taste. Automatically, this is the positive nature of our process. Buddhists, for example, they try to deny the senses. For example, when they meditate, has anybody ever been a Buddhist here? Sadhguru, you weren't a Buddhist? This one, she was a Buddhist. Anyway, you know that one of the ways they meditate is in front of a wall. Right? It's this. Huh?
No, sorry, I don't agree with what
Oh.
you're saying.
All right, well, then you haven't visited the Buddhist monastery I visited, because I went to one in which all the students were sitting in front of the wall. But anyway, now I'm considered to be very happy with what I'll say, but since I'm going to say these things for the pleasure of my spiritual master according to his version, you'll have to hear it with tolerance. So, the Buddhists, the difficulty is that without giving positive engagement to the senses, simply denying the senses does not satisfy them. As it is mentioned, in impersonal realization, one can come up to the point of Brahman and then fall down again. Because unless one is engaged in positive activities for Krishna satisfaction, the soul doesn't feel joyful, and therefore it looks for material enjoyment to get. And just like we see so many Mayavadi sannyasis in India, they deny the existence of the Supreme Lord's body, they deny the existence of our own spiritual form, and therefore they deny the possibility of spiritual activities. So the result is that they have to find satisfaction in the material world. Because the soul is always active, the soul is always looking for relationship. And if it cannot find it spiritually, then it has to look for it in a material way. So, there has to be positive engagement. The best way to give up all of these different desires is to learn to concentrate on absorbing ourselves in spiritual activities. Even if at first, as is described in the Nectar of Instruction, even if at first there's no taste, still the taste will develop. This takes some discipline. A disciple means one who practices discipline. So we should not be, just like someone asked me yesterday, I have no taste for reading. So is there something else I can do? And then Balaram Prabhu was sitting with me and said very nicely that that is just an excuse to say you have no taste. Because none of us have taste in the beginning. Taste is developed. Just like the bitter taste of Kerala, bitter melon. You know that vegetable that's very bitter? So, in the beginning, very few people like the taste of this vegetable. But it's an acquired taste. If you eat it regularly, after a while you like it very much. In fact, Lord Chaitanya preferred bitter vegetables, and he's the sweetest person, but he preferred the most bitter taste. So, bitter taste is acquired. In the same way, of course, the chanting of Hare Krishna and reading and all sadhana bhakti thing, they may be bitter in the beginning. But the Nectar of Instruction explains that bitterness is due to our jaundice-like condition of avidya or ignorance. Because our original Krishna consciousness is now covered over, we can't experience what is actually sweet. What seems sweet appears now bitter. And so what is sweet is seen to be bitter. So by regular chanting, by regular reading, even if you don't in the beginning have an ability, force yourself. Just like a child forces himself to go to school, or a man forces himself to go to work. Everybody is applying some force to things that they don't like, because they hope that by doing it they'll achieve some good. So in spiritual life it is the same way. If you force yourself in the beginning, then gradually you'll develop a taste. And when you develop a taste for Krishna, automatically you lose a taste for material existence. Automatically these material desires, if you're being haunted by so many material desires and you're wondering, how will I get free from them? Put the time in Krishna's service. Put the time in to do deity worship. Put the time in to cook for the Lord. Put the time in to study the books. Put the time in to chant japa. Then automatically these material tastes, material desires, they will go away. This is the positive nature of devotional life. Then the next word which is used here is dvesha, because of envy. We have affection and we also have envy. Envy, and the word that is used here is hatred. Hatred or envy are very similar. So enviousness is, again, the opposite quality of spiritual life. In spiritual life, we see that the devotees are always trying to push each other towards Krishna. Just like Radharani was the best of all devotees. But she takes more pleasure when she sees the gopis engaged in serving Krishna than when she herself engages in Krishna service. And the gopis take more pleasure in trying to make Radharani able to serve Krishna. So this is try to stay awake. This is the nature of spiritual life, that it is free from envy. In the material world, everyone is trying to make headway at the expense of someone else. And when we see someone else becoming better than we are, we immediately become angry and envious and dislike that person. But in spiritual life, we feel very fortunate if we can see someone who is a better devotee than us. And we immediately think, I wish that I could get this person's association, because this person is able to serve Guru and Krishna better than me. The spiritual consciousness is free from this envious nature. In the spiritual world, there is no place for this enviousness or hatred. So, serving the devotees is most important. A quality of a Vaishnava is that a Vaishnava is always engaged in serving other devotees. And we should try to practice. One of the advantages of living in a devotional community is that we can get so much opportunity to serve each other. So what is the best way to serve another devotee? To help them by your good example. That's the best thing you can do. One certain way you can help other devotees is that you be a good example of Krishna consciousness. Then that will give great strength. Just like you can see, why is this temple successful? Practically, this is you can say, the most successful temple in Australia. What is the reason? Because there are senior devotees here who year after year continue to be good examples. This is the reason. And therefore, all the other devotees get strength from that example. And similarly, that next group of devotees, their good example immediately gives strength to the younger devotees. So the best service you can ever do for the community is that you become a very good example of Krishna consciousness. But one should do one's duty, even if there are compelling factors which make you not want to. What is the quality of a hero? For example, you look and read the Mahabharata. Why is the Mahabharata so inspiring? Because there are so many heroic persons. Every one of them. Look at the Pandavas, how heroic they are. Look at Kunti. Look at Draupadi. Look at Bhishma. These persons, even against incredible odds where no human being would normally want to continue to do their duty, they persevere in their duty. A hero is a person who is so tolerant, so determined, that even under great difficulty, they are unfailing in their duty. So, our books are full of such heroic personalities. Now, our movement has to also be full of heroic persons, heroes and heroines. That's what the Krishna consciousness movement needs. It needs modern-day heroes and heroines, so that the people who are in the world today can see practically wonderful, outstanding examples of Krishna consciousness. Persons who did their duty under the most trying circumstances. Just like Prabhupada is a perfect modern-day hero. So if you're always fulfilling his duty, never faltering, never disappointing anyone, always doing what Krishna wants, always doing what is the statement of Scripture. So what stops us from being a hero or heroine? Our own selfish material desires, which are we're so poor-hearted that just due to some selfish, small material desires, we give up being an excellent example. What else? What is human life meant for? Now, human life. There was a discussion with Duryodhana, and he acknowledged that and also there's a similar discussion with Kamsa. Even though they're demons, the appeal was made by Vasudeva to Kamsa that the best thing you can do with this human life is to act according to one's duty, and thus, be remembered for exemplary behavior. But what else is it? What else is there? The temporary spot life of satisfaction, a flickering flash of sense enjoyment, or that one's example is so nice that the reputation of a person lives after him forever. Just like Prabhupada, his example and activities are so perfect that his reputation just continues to increase. So a hero or heroine acts with this idea. They don't think, what temporarily will give me immediate satisfaction? They think that my example and activities should be so good that no one can ever find fault in them. Then automatically one's reputation will live on forever. Otherwise one dies and is forgotten. He becomes dust in the earth and is forgotten. So how do we know how to behave? It's all stated here in these transcendental literatures. One has to act according to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, without speculating and without any consideration of sense gratification. Then one's activities become beneficial for everyone else. Human life is meant as a life of sacrifice. The other types of forms of life are meant for selfish enjoyment. But human life is meant for serving and sacrificing for the benefit of others. You're meant to give benefit to other people. So what is the best way? By being Krishna conscious. If you become Krishna conscious, so many people become benefited. And if you don't, then you don't even benefit yourself, what to speak of anyone else. So envy has to be given up. And the next word is fear, bhaya. Fearfulness. Fearfulness means the bodily concept of life. Because of the bodily concept of life, the body is always subject to deterioration or disintegration or destruction. So I'm fearful. Something's going to happen to my body. Or something is going to happen to my subtle body, my mind, my reputation, or other types of things of this type. So out of fear, one also becomes absorbed in the wrong concepts. A devotee, just like Prabhupada's name is Abhaya. Abhaya Charanavida is fearlessness. The only way you can become fearless is if you're Krishna conscious. Just like Arjuna. Actually, Arjuna had every reason to be fearful, because there was really no way he could escape being killed in the battle of Kurukshetra. It's impossible. The persons that he was opposing all had the ability to kill him. Bhishma had the ability to kill him, Dronacharya had the ability to kill him, Karna had the ability to kill him. All the generals on the other side could kill Arjuna. And yet we see Arjuna, and he was fearful. He was fearful for so many reasons. You see, he starts shaking at the end of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He shakes, and his bow slips out of his hand. And his emotions are due to many types of fears. Perhaps not as much for his own personal welfare, but certainly with the idea of what will happen to my family, how will I... He was fearful, how will I enjoy? This battle is going to interfere with my happiness. If either I get killed or all those I love get killed, my happiness and pleasure is going to be interfered. He became very fearful. But then Krishna reminded him of who Krishna was and who Arjuna is and what is their relationship. Then he became fearless. That means that transcendental knowledge brings one above fear. And it is only through the ignorance that we become fearful. So one who is actually Krishna conscious is not fearful, just like the cowherd boys. There's the big gaping mouth of Aghasura, and the cowherd boys are floating and jumping and walking right into the mouth of the Aghasura demon. And they thought, this looks like these teeth look like mountains. And actually, they also could understand to some extent this is a great demon. But they didn't care, because they knew Krishna will protect us. So a devotee has no fear. He's fearless, because he's always mindful Krishna is going to protect him. So he has no fear. So all of these qualities, fearfulness, affection, and envy, because of these, normally one meditates in the wrong way. one meditates on material forms. So at the present moment, our mind is obsessed with all types of material meditations. All of the forms which have been imprinted on the mind have come as a result of these types of emotions. Because of fearfulness, I meditated. Because of affection, I meditated on a woman's form for so long. Or woman thinks, because of affection, I meditated on a man's form, and it's imprinted in my mind. Because of fearfulness, I meditated on so many other types of forms which made me afraid. Maybe some police, maybe some weapons, maybe some fearful animals, and these have imprinted themselves upon my mind. Because of envy, I have meditated in anger on so many different persons and other things which made me envious, maybe different material products that I wanted, and they have imprinted themselves on my mind. So, if you take a photograph, it's supposed to only have one shot, right, and then it's supposed to move to the next frame. But if you keep snapping again and again, what happens after a while? There's a double impression, triple impression. After a while, you can't make out anything clearly. And that's what happens now. Our mind is so full of millions of impressions on account of attachment, fear, and envy. And we need to have clear film so that we can take a photograph of Krishna with nothing else to no double exposure. So the process of chanting Hare Krishna, it clears away all these impressions. The chanting and the devotional process, all the ninefold activities, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, gradually all the impressions will be wiped clear. But you shouldn't put new impressions on. Now that we have taken to Krishna consciousness, we should not keep snapping out of fear, attachment, and envy. We're supposed to control these emotions and only snap the photograph of Krishna while cleansing all the time. So gradually Krishna will be imprinted upon our mind. And it is such a nice process. It is such a powerful process, the chanting of Hare Krishna. That even after a little bit of practice, Krishna says, it will protect you at the most dangerous time. Even a little bit of advancement on this path will protect you at the most dangerous moment, Krishna promises. So even if someone is a devotee only 2, 3, 4 years, when they die, there's every chance that they may remember Krishna. We've seen devotees who had cancer. Even after 3, 4 years, they had already become advanced enough that they could chant very strongly the Hare Krishna mantra. And they had enough intelligence to go to Vrindavan at the time when they were about to die, being surrounded by devotees, and they would be chanting. So we've practically seen already in our movement the proof of the Bhagavad Gita verses and the proof that this process works. That it is so nice and so powerful that it can allow us to remember Krishna at the moment of death. So we should very strictly execute Krishna consciousness with full confidence that the process will be effective, with full enthusiasm and full determination. Then it will be very easy to remember Krishna at the moment of death, and then there will be no more material births. We'll be able to be promoted back to the spiritual world, back to be with Krishna. So we'll stop here and ask if anyone has any questions. They take birth in a better situation. They get the result, and it's mentioned, Sujinam Srimatam Dehe Yoga Prashna Vijayate. They take their birth in a family of a Brahmin or in a family of a wealthy person, and they again get a better opportunity for serving Krishna. In the 6th chapter and later verse, Krishna says that the unsuccessful yogi in his next birth very easily becomes attracted to the yogic principles. So fallen devotees, due to some type of sensual weakness, then in their next life they can take up spiritual life where they left off. However, if a devotee falls down because of offenses can actually obliterate one's spiritual advancement. Just like Vaishnava Aparad, Guru Aparad, these things are so bad that they can destroy one's entire advancement that one has made. So there's a difference between fall down due to sensual weakness and fall down due to offensiveness. And the problem is that when one does fall down, one may then start to commit many offenses. And those offenses gradually undo one's spiritual assets. In all cases, humility is so important. Whether one is a practicing devotee in good standing or whether one is fallen, if he can remain humble, there's every chance he can be elevated again. Humility is very important. Always be humble. But for protecting Krishna, and for protecting Krishna's reputation, for defending Krishna, you can say, in his philosophy, then we may be very strong. The devotee may not defend himself, he may be very humble and meek, but for defending another devotee or for defending the philosophy or defending Krishna, he becomes very aggressive. Just like we saw Srila Prabhupada. He could become very aggressive when it came to defending the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But personally, he would be very humble. Because in my Vyasa opening, I said, Prabhupada was like a tortoise. Whenever he was attacked, he would withdraw. If a Bhakti yogi goes to the heavenly planets, then when he comes back again, he will again get the opportunity for devotional life. Whereas a fruitive worker who goes to the heavenly planets, when he comes back, doesn't have the same good fortune. Does that clear them?
It's just that sometimes you worry that you may go there somehow or another and you come back down and it's the middle of the Kali Yuga and logic to understand.
No, Krishna will realize. There, he could also put you into another universe. Krishna will maximum arrangement. If a devotee goes to a heavenly planet, but he's a genuine devotee, then when he comes back, he will continue this process of devotional service. But the fruitive workers who go to the heavenly planets, when their good karma is used up, they're left with nothing. The devotee is always benefited by his advancement. Another thing is that he may continue to perform devotional service in the heavenly planet and continue to promote himself from that point. That's also possible. But why do you say that the Sankirtan movement is not going on the heavenly planets? Where did you read that?
It's my speculation.
Because Lord Chaitanya delivered the whole universe, all the living entities in the universe. So he delivered everyone on every planet. And it's described that Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Narad Muni, they're all engaging when the arti goes on. It's to be understood that since the time of Lord Chaitanya, the Sankirtan movement has spread everywhere. So I think that there's the Sankirtan movement that's going on everywhere. Because certainly the demigods all took part. And then after many of them may have returned, if they didn't go back, they may have continued in their execution of their activity, but they would not have forgotten the association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Sankirtan movement. The Sankirtan movement affected the whole universe, not just this planet. Lord Chaitanya just didn't come and want to deliver one planet. When he comes, the influence is very great. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma took part in the Sankirtan movement. So then, does it mean that after taking part, he didn't go back and tell everybody? Extraordinary, the Sankirtan movement.
If you look at it in the time, then you got the same as you see.
And many of them may have returned back to their posts. If not going back to God, they may have also returned back to spread the Sankirtan movement. The Sankirtan movement is not limited. Prabhupada always gave that impression that it is going on. And sometimes Prabhupada would say, if we finish delivering this planet, then we can go to the other planets. Anyway, we're on this planet, so we should be more concerned with how small, our Sankirtan party is still here. But the demigods worry about their planets. We have to do the Sankirtan here on this planet. Well, certainly if demigods know everything, why should they navigate to Sankirtan? And they know everything. So why is it that they would not engage in prime benediction? They're not fools. Any other questions? So, let us have short kirtan. Tonight we'll have another program for nectar instruction, text number 3.